Grace, we're looking at something now that I really loved.
Yes, this is the baklava. It's the most traditional Turkish dessert. You can buy it in any kind of coffee shop or just about anywhere in Turkey.
And do you mean that they eat a lot of dessert?
I wouldn't say that they eat a lot of dessert. However, when they have their tea or their coffee, it's very common to see, as you saw, they are very big pieces of baklava.
You said they were not?
No, they're not very big pieces, but it's very common for them to have just one little slice.
But they're pretty powerful pieces. I mean,
oh yes, they're very sweet. It's not like you want very many of them. But it is very common to eat a piece of baklava with your morning coffee or your tea, anytime like that. Just like maybe you would eat a few cookies with your tea. And what it is it's the phyllo dough, which is very crispy, and they'll layer it. In between these layers, they'll put chopped nuts with sugar or honey. It depends on who's making it, what they want to use. And then they just cook that in the oven, and when it's done, they'll pour sugar water or honey over it, and you've got to cut it while it's still warm. Otherwise, the entire thing will just crack and crumble and you won't get pieces. And they cut it in, as you saw, maybe about 1-inch pieces.
They're hard to cut, though. I mean, it's hard to break without mashing it.
It is, but when it just comes out of the oven and you pour that honey or sugar water over it, it's a little bit more tender and you can cut it then. But if you cut it after, then like you saw, it won't cut very well at all. So you got to cut it right when it comes out of the oven, because I've made this before.
Oh, okay, now this is bringing up a couple of questions for me. Mm-hmm. One is about forks. But first, and I'm saying that so that I'll remember, and you'll help me remember.
Okay.
But first I want to say, would they normally, and I mean, if everybody looks at those forks and they look at that piece of baklava, is that one piece there? Is it? Or two? I can't quite tell.
2 pieces.
2 pieces, okay. So it's really much small. It's only half that big then.
Right.
All right. Would they bother to cut that?
No. You really don't see people eating baklava with forks. Usually they're just going to pick it up and eat it with their fingers.
And do they eat with their fingers more than people do here?
Definitely. I remember getting in trouble when we would come back to the States for not using our utensils for different things, whether it was our meat or something else. I remember seeing somebody eat their pizza with a fork and a knife, and I thought that they were so weird. And even steak or chicken, I mean, I'm always going to pick it up and I'm going to eat it with my fingers. Or ribs, and seeing people eat that with a fork and knife, I was like, that just takes too much time. I can't do that.
well, so what about forks and spoons where you lived?
It would depend. You don't really see people using them that much. If you're eating, as far as in the village.
Well, let's take the dishes
like
we're looking
Turkish,
at. We're looking at this stuff, rice and some
rice,
salad type of looking stuff.
Right. Rice and salad, I'm sure that you'd have a fork to eat. But even with the meat, you'd probably see people picking that up with their fingers and eating it. Lots of things. Usually they'll have, like the meal that we had, definitely the pizza they would be eating with their fingers. The baklava they would be eating with their fingers.
So these Turkish people put out these forks because they thought, here's a bunch of Americans.
And they'll want forks. Yes.
It was impossible for me to cut that thing without destroying it with a fork.
Exactly. That's why, really, you shouldn't ever eat baklava with a fork. You should always eat it with your fingers, and because your teeth are much sharper, and they'll actually, be able to bite through it, and you'll be able to get the full flavor of all of the different layers together instead of destroying it with your fork.
That stuff was great.
It was. That's why it's so popular in Turkey.
Do they have any other desserts that are popular?
Yes. They like to make cakes, but the problem with their cakes is in order to make the cake moist, they will pour sugar water all over the cake. And we used to, growing up, we called it wet cake. And I remember going to birthday parties, and we'd say, "Oh, they're bringing out the cake. Is it a wet cake?" And as little kids, we didn't know what else to call it. We'd be like, "Is it a wet cake?" "Yeah, it's a wet cake." "Oh, try to make sure that we don't have to eat any. Don't take a piece. It's going to be gross." Because it was really, some of it literally was falling apart. It was so
dissolving in
wet.
That sugary water.
Yes, because they'll actually take the whole thing and put it almost like in a bucket of sugar water.
Really?
To make the cake really wet, but they think that's really good because it's a moist cake. Yeah, it's not good.
Oh, now, Grace, this reminds me, when we're talking about cake, it reminds me that I ought to ask you about ice cream. Do these people have refrigerators and freezers and ice cream, cold stuff like that, frozen stuff?
Turks, I don't remember eating much ice cream with them. And one thing with Turks, Romanians, and Bulgarians, they get really worried about cold stuff. When it comes to children, they think, oh, if they eat too much frozen or cold things, they'll get sick, especially in the summertime because it's hot outside. And I remember our teacher, when we were in school, she wouldn't let us drink cold water when we came back from PE. She would absolutely refuse to let us go to any water fountain. She would go and get cups of like lukewarm water and make us drink it because they thought that it was really unhealthy to be drinking cold water after working out. And the same thing goes for a lot of kids. They won't let them eat, ice cream or anything really cold. They don't put ice cubes in their water ever.
This picture that we're looking at now, I don't have any memories about that sort of a thing because, I didn't grow up with it and I haven't visited those places. How about you? I couldn't help but wonder when I was looking at that mural. So this everybody, this is on the wall. This is something that somebody painted.
Yes, I would say it would be like some type of Turkish village with the mosque in the middle. And I don't know if you've ever been in a mosque, but I've been in several mosques. They're actually very, very pretty. Most of them are really nice places. Lots of artwork and interesting architect. Let's see around here. We've got a wall. This wall around the village would be probably pretty traditional for old Turkish cities. Very common. And other than that, you see lots and lots of buildings, which is very common in any European or Turkish culture. They want to build everything within inches of each other. People don't always garden so much on their land, or they don't have many yards. They want to build on every single square inch. And then, especially in the cities.
So everybody doesn't have their own lawnmower.
No, nobody has lawnmowers because nobody has lawns. If you do have any grass or whatever, what you've done is build a garden on it. Because every single square inch there is either used to build on or to garden on. And if you have a foot of land without any tomatoes or green peppers growing on it, they think that you're wasting it. When my parents bought a home and put a yard in the front, I remember that all the Turks thought they were crazy. What are you doing? You can be building you could be building a bigger house, or you could have a wonderful garden and feed all of your family all year. You have so much land. Look what you could do with it. And they thought my parents were crazy for only building a 10 foot by 10 foot garden when they had all this other acreage that they could put a garden on. So they believe in using every square inch there to do something with. It has to be useful.